I think they're seeing the value in it. I think they're seeing the value in using their own voice and realizing that nobody else can create this. Nobody else has this voice either.
Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast. Or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by my quick reference guide using AI chatbots to enhance planning and instruction, published by ASCD and ISTE. It's full of quick tips educators can use, and Amazon almost always has it on sale. Just search for me, Monica Burns, on Amazon to see all of my books and quick reference guides. But please remember that there are 2 authors named Monica Burns on Amazon, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to tell the difference between our books. Just head to Amazon, search Monica Burns, and you'll find my quick reference guide using AI chatbots to enhance planning and instruction. This week's episode is titled Using Student Podcast Projects to Check for Understanding with Katie Brooks. Katie is a 5th grade ELA teacher based near Austin, Texas, and this summer she published a fantastic article on Edutopia all about podcasting in elementary school. And today in our conversation, Katie talks all about podcasting, how it's become a really powerful tool in her classroom. And as you'll hear, I taught 5th grade for a number of years. And if you've taught at that grade level or worked with students and teachers at that grade level, you know it's a really great middle ground for grabbing ideas you can scale for both early elementary all the way up to secondary. And she gives such great tips and ideas, not just for literacy, but for building student confidence, voice, ownership, you name it. So today you're going to hear Katie walk us through some tech tips, some classroom routines, and a few unexpected ways podcasting can help kids show what they know. Let's jump into the conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Katie. I am so excited to chat with you today about student podcast projects. But before we get into all of that, can you share with listeners a little bit about your role in education? What does your day-to-day look like?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be doing this. My day-to-day looks like I'm a 5th grade teacher in Texas near Austin. I teach ELA. So I teach for 3 different classes.
Mm-hmm.
So I have in total about 70 students that I work with. But 5th grade ELA.
Nice. Yeah, I taught 5th grade for 6.5 years. And 2 of those years we did like a split where I did like half the day with one group, ELA and social studies, half the day with the others. And part of that overlapped with us going 1-to-1 with iPad. Part of that was very much low to no tech, but podcasts, weren't part of the conversation. Even as a consumer, like I like to think I was kind of early on as a podcast listener, but I know I was not like in that first wave,
Right.
So as you think about the classroom component, the literacy connection, what inspired you to bring podcasting into your literacy instruction?
Yeah. So actually about 9 years ago now, which is crazy to think about, but I'm entering my 9th year of teaching. I was student teaching abroad at an international school in Ecuador. And my mentor teacher, I was just super fortunate. I had a mentor teacher who was really interested in technology. And by the time I got there, she just came back from this tech conference in Seattle. She was so excited. And she started talking about podcasting. And I kind of brushed it off at first of like, oh, okay, that's advanced teacher stuff. Like, I can't do that. And then she brought it up again a couple of years later when COVID hit. So we were trying to think of ways to engage the students as everybody is just online now.
Yep.
And we're not in the classroom anymore. And I thought, okay, this is great, but it can only be done in this certain context when everyone has their computer, they're at home, they have a quiet space. So we did it then, and it was fantastic. They started getting really into podcast, I think, just by being home and being online all the time. So it was something that you could see, oh, they are familiar at least with what podcasts are, and it's gotten more popular since then. But yeah, just the last couple of years, I started bringing it back here in this public school Texas setting. Very different school, but the kids are really into it anyway. So yeah, I just started bringing it back the last couple of years and have seen a lot of engagement through it.
That's amazing. And, you're so right that there's been a wider spread adoption on podcasting as listeners. I always, joke at the end of the year where I'm like afraid to look at my Spotify numbers of how many minutes of podcasts I've listened to. And I'm like, it's kind of like the radio. It's fine. It's just like on in the background sometimes. Sometimes it's a little bit more in depth. I mean, obviously now there's video podcasts for many creators. This one is still audio. Thank goodness. I think that makes it a little easier. But, as you, shifted from your work in Ecuador to your work in Texas, students may have listened to podcasts, or they may have family members who drop them off at school and listen to podcasts on the way. How did you introduce this whole idea of podcasting to your students, particularly the ones that might not be familiar with them or might not understand what that process looks like?
Right. So it started out as just one of the options on the choice menu was to listen to a podcast. And I think one of the podcasts that I really like is called Greeking Out from National Geographic Kids. And we were reading Percy Jackson at the time. So they were all really into Greek mythology. So I think seeing that on there, they just thought, oh, cool. Some kind of tech component. I'm going to jump on that for my choice menu. And they started listening to those. Smash Boom Best, I think, was another one that they really enjoyed about debating, the past and the curious. He just started implementing those more as choice menu activities. And I think once a couple of kids really got into it and started thinking, oh, these are kind of funny, or these are really interesting short episodes, and they're analyzing them and finding a lot of value in that, I mentioned, oh, would you want to try creating your own? Or that was one of the options for more of an extension activity. And then just seeing the value in those who had chosen that activity and seeing the excitement, and they would tell their friends about it, or, oh, have you listened to my podcast? Because I put it up on Google Classroom for the other students to listen to. That just made them want to do it more. So that was really fun.
I love that idea of the choice board as like a easy way to get kids in who are going to jump, maybe be your early adopters first, right? Like get that buzz happening. They are maybe drawn to that kind of way to consume content, getting ready to create their own. So I think that's such a nice kind of low stakes way for someone who's like, where do I even start to bring this to a group when maybe you're not sure if it's right for everyone, or you're not sure everyone's going to be into it. Putting it along with a routine like a choice board, right, is so fantastic. So, as kids were getting in and kind of creating or maybe even the consuming piece of it too, what tools or tech did you use to get started? You mentioned sharing some stuff in Google Classroom, but anything simple, teachers should know about?
Yeah. So I think it's funny because I've definitely had a huge span of teacher partners who have been very hesitant about education or hesitant about technology
Yeah.
or about ed tech, and then some who have been super on board from the get-go. And so it's been fun and a challenge to tell the ones who are more hesitant, like, no, this is actually the easiest thing you could do.
Yeah.
So nice. But as far as the podcast, all these podcasts have websites that are just super easy to put the link into your Google Classroom or share on an email or a Canvas or whatever. And then the actual recording website that I use is called Vocaroo. It's in my notes of the Edutopia article.
Yeah.
But it's super easy. It's actually, when they go to the website, it's just the red record button.
Right.
There's nothing else to look into, nothing else to get tripped up on, but it's just the record button. You record it, and then there's a button to download. It's super easy. So it's really user-friendly for the kids too. But yeah, it's pretty much those. Just when they analyze the podcast, even just looking up podcasts for kids. There's so many. I have quite a few examples in my article of places that you get started at. Passing the Curious is a really fun one for history. There's a lot of like science podcasts, different things that they can get into based on their interests. And then, yeah, the recording, we just use Vocaroo, just super simple.
Yeah. And I love that that removal of the friction, right? Here's the button, the one thing, you're in this place, right? Ready for kids to jump into, and that you've really front loaded this experience for them with podcast examples and a variety of content, whether it's the historical connection, to your literacy work, right? And there's lots of science podcasts out there. There's so many things to choose from, and that library, if you will, of available podcasts has expanded, I'm sure, greatly since you were even exploring this, 5-9 years ago, right? When this first came up in conversation. So with the choice boards, right? That's one way that kids might choose an activity, share their learning. How has podcasting helped you check for understanding in new or maybe unexpected ways?
Yeah. Well, I think, initially it being more of an extension activity, I would just put a couple different podcasts and do more comprehension activities. But then with the checking for understanding with creating the podcast, I think that's been the big part. It's been so rewarding. We do a novel study on this book called Schooled by Gordon Corman. And each chapter in Schooled is from a perspective of a different student. And so one of the activities, for example, was to create a podcast as if you're two of the different students and talking about what's going on at the school and things like that. So just being able to see them really take on that character's point of view, and was really, really cool. And they were able to really get into it. They would spend days on it, go home and work on it there too. And I would just see them light up and get really excited about the book in a way that I didn't before. And then those who did choose the podcast, maybe later on, if we're reading towards the end of the book, and if we're reading the character that they chose for their perspective, they would get really excited and be like, well, I think that they would have done this. And so you can see that it sees with them.
And there's that empowering component for them to say, like, I've got some ownership on this material, or, I'm more connected, right, to these characters, or, the conversations that kids have to say, like, they would never say that. Like, look at this page, right? And like, let's go back into the text and really pull from it. So for something that might seem like it's not as deep at first look, like there's so much that's involved for kids to prep and to talk and to plan and kind of to go through those pieces. So, I definitely see some of those big differences between traditional reading responses or traditional comprehension tasks. And so, what, kind of response have you seen from students when they're using podcasting in your ELA classroom?
Yeah, I've seen it. Fantastic response. I think they get really excited about it. I remember in the very beginning when I would bring it up and kind of just say, what podcast have you heard about? A lot of them are like, what's a podcast? But then now it's funny, last year when it's like, oh, my mom listens to true crime podcasts every morning. And it's like, yeah, we're not going to be focusing on those. But I get that. But yeah, just seeing their excitement and seeing how much they would rather do I think in their heads, they might be thinking, oh, I just have to talk about it. I'm kind of taking the easy way out.
Yeah.
I don't have to like write an essay or anything like that. But little do they know that there's so much collaboration that happens. They're writing the script, they're researching, they're planning it out, using their critical thinking skills, and then actually using their speaking and listening skills to produce the podcast. They get really excited. They market the podcast. They talk to people about it. So it's really exciting to see this project-based learning right in front of their eyes, and they don't even realize it.
Yeah. And just the process component that you mentioned, it's been not to like go down a whole like AI pathway here.
Oh, yeah.
But like, so many of my conversations, and you might be having these too at your school, right, have to do with like, how are kids going to share their learning when they have, ChatGPT on the tabs of their browsers?
Right.
And of course, there's, a whole conversation about preparing kids to use those tools and navigate them, and all the things. So I don't want to be dismissive of it by any means. But when we think about these types of projects, like you just can't ask, you say like, oh, I go to Notebook LM and have it make me a podcast. Well, it's not quite the same as having a student go through this whole process as a reader, as a planner, as a writer, as a collaborator. You were even saying like as a marketer, right? To like really think about your audience and what that's going to look like. So I love that emphasis on process, because I think particularly now, and understandably, right, for educators who are thinking about the impact of AI, like that jump from task to like essay feels really scary, And so if there's a creative project like the one that you're talking about with podcasting, where kids can have these, checkpoints, if you will, along the way that they're necessary in order to create something that they're ready to share. Are you kind of seeing any of those AI connections in your work so far, or how have maybe other teachers that you work with kind of thought about the process piece and like the planning piece for this?
Right. That's a really good point. I think I was also one of the teachers that kind of adapted AI pretty quickly. We used a lot of Adobe Studio. They, trying to magic school, things like that. But at the same time, I do understand kind of the pressure the teachers face to make sure that we're using it correctly and ethically, and making sure that the students don't take advantage of it. I've caught many students on, ChatGPT for different projects, but it's just really encouraging to see just from the jump. I think they're eager and excited to share their voice. They get so excited about, as you mentioned, taking that ownership, thinking, oh, this is my podcast. So this is my thing that I get to create, that I think AI is kind of put out of their minds a little bit, just because they're so excited to share their own words and their own opinions. I think it's a very interesting thing to do also for opinion writing, or to even introduce an argumentative unit. I've done podcasts where 3 students are debating types of renewable energy. There's a Storyworks article that I really like about Amelia Earhart and debating kind of what happened there.
Yeah.
That disappearance. And so having a podcast where they can share their opinions too, backed by text evidence, I think they're seeing the value in it. I think they're seeing the value in using their own voice and realizing that nobody else can create this. Nobody else has this voice either.
That's such a great point about that when we think of the AI connection, right? Like the AI output can be really impersonal, does not feel like yourself, I guess is what I'm trying to get at, right? And so having your voice captured in a way that is much more personal, that your opinion is heard, that your enthusiasm or your hesitation, right? All those things that come across with our voice, I think is really powerful. So for someone who's listening today and is like, Katie, I'm in. I love this idea of giving podcasts for my students to consume on a choice board and then having them create something that they're really proud to share. what advice would you give to another teacher who wants to try podcasting but isn't sure where to begin?
Right. I would say just do it. I think a lot of us can overcomplicate in our head we have to have an entire podcasting unit and it has to be this big project that we need this 50-page back and forth so they can plan it all out. It really doesn't have to be that. I would say just look at what you're already doing, these maybe choice menu activities or what you're doing for an assessment every now and then. It doesn't have to be all the time, but look at what you're already doing and see, okay, what am I doing? I understand, writing. I'm an ELA teacher. I understand the importance of those constructed responses. But where can I plug in the speaking and listening aspect as well? I know in Texas, it's a big TEK or a big standard that we have in speaking and listening. So yeah, just look at what you're already doing and think, okay, where can I plug this in or substitute them to analyze a podcast, maybe instead of an article, and they can listen to it and even read the show notes. Or where can I substitute instead of writing a response like usual, or where can I substitute? Really, you're still writing the script, you're still there participating in that group collaboration. And it's really them that take it and make it their own. The students who see this option and really go full force with it. And yeah, I like it because it's really accessible to every student. It doesn't have to be a certain length of podcast. It doesn't have to be a certain length of response. It's just, it could be for all students, no matter what. So just see what you're doing so far and see where you can plug it in.
Yeah, and just keeping it simple, like you said. It doesn't have to be a whole big thing at the start. It could just be these small moments in between. So this has been so helpful for, anyone who's listening who's reconsidering this, right? Maybe revisiting the idea of podcasting, trying it for the first time as a consumer or creator with their students. I mentioned your Edutopia article. We'll link out to that. We'll link out to your Instagram too, of course. But for anyone who's on the move, what's the best way to connect with you? Where can they follow along and learn more about your work?
Yeah, I would say right now, besides the Edutopia article, I'm on the social media as Miss Brooks and her books. And I just share a lot of ELA and book content on those two.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, Katie, so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It was lots of fun chatting with Katie today. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Choice boards are an easy entry point for integrating audio content. Audio responses offer rich insight into student comprehension. Podcasting fosters authentic voice, something AI can't replicate. Creative podcast projects increase ownership and excitement. Remember, you can find the show notes and the full list of resources from today's episode, including all of the ways to connect with Katie Brooks, by heading to easyedtechpodcast.com. And of course, if you check out the summary or description area, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you'll see plenty of links to tap on and explore too. This episode is sponsored by my quick reference guide using AI chatbots to enhance planning and instruction, published by ASCD and ISTE. It's full of quick tips educators can use, and Amazon almost always has it on sale. Just search for me, Monica Burns, on Amazon to see all of my books and quick reference guides. But please remember that there are 2 authors named Monica Burns on Amazon, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to tell the difference between our books. Just head to Amazon, search Monica Burns, and you'll find my quick reference guide using AI chatbots to enhance planning and instruction. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.